Hello and welcome to this hurricane short summary, folks. We are going to be looking at a very powerful storm, one that I alluded that I would be going over separately in the 1988 Atlantic hurricane season video, which should be just be my previous video, Hurricane Gilbert. In this video, I hope to show to y'all how our Hurricane Gilbert was just essentially just a big monster, and this thing was insanely powerful in multiple ways and a record holder, although not number one, also in various ways as well. Of course, just as all systems and anywhere and any tropical basin start, they start as a tropical wave and then blah blah blah, and then we start carrying as a tropical depression, which is where we start. On the 8th of September, via satellite imagery, what would become Gilbert was classed as a tropical depression. This was done using something called the Dvorak number scale or Dvorak number system. Doesn't really matter. Same thing. People know what you're talking about. This is a way to pretty pretty accurately, guesstimate the strength of almost any tropical system, as long as it is not sub or extratropical, the intensity of a hurricane, specifically its wind speeds. This is normally just done in the Atlantic, so of course, duh. America owns the world, duh. So of course it's used in miles per hour. So yeah, it is a very neat little system that's used, and it spotted this thing as a depression. This thing would become a tropical storm just the next day, become a hurricane the day after that, and then become a major hurricane the day after that. So we are now on the 11th of September and seeing some rapid developments, also moving at a pretty rapid clip as well. We started well off to the east of the Lesser Antilles, and we are now to the south of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. That is crazy. This thing would continue on and directly hit Jamaica, completely ravaging the island with winds of 125 miles per hour. As we can tell, though, Gilbert would strengthen even further, peaking on the 13th of September with a staggering 1 minute wind speed of 185 miles per hour at a minimum pressure of 888 millibars. Something I went over in the season video, although I'll explain here as well, is that the Hurricane Hunter drop sonde initially recorded 885. For some reason, the drop sondes tended to record a very slightly lower pressure than actual. This was, as far as I know, fixed or actually pretty soon after that, if I'm not mistaken, which, yeah, of course, that definitely should be, and so good on them. But it was reanalyzed and found that 888 was the proper measurement. Anyway, just a little interesting tidbit there. Gilbert would obviously continue on its path and strike Cozumel Island and the Yucatan Peninsula, both at a staggering 160 miles per hour. Due to the intense land friction that the Yucatan Peninsula ever so provides, this would weaken Gilbert down to just a Category 2. Well, that didn't stop it. It became a Category 4 just around the end of its lifespan in water in the Gulf of Mexico, before weakening, thankfully, a little bit more. Weakening, that is, not strengthening, and striking La Pesca, Mexico at 125 miles per hour. Right around the heart of Mexico, Gilbert takes a pretty sharp turn to the northeast, where it would finally dissipate over Lake Superior, which, fun fact, is actually too big to be a lake. It's actually an inland sea, and dissipated on the 19th. Dissipated as in it became undistinguishable with the cold front that it was merging with, because of course. Gilbert is ultimately responsible for the deaths of 318 people and just under $3 billion in damage. This was just simply a very powerful storm. In fact, there would be a 19-foot storm surge in Jamaica. The Of course, the biggest problem with measuring storm surge is that it's relative depending on the tides of the region and whether the area at the time is in low or high tide. Relative stuff is hard, and I don't really like it, but I'm still putting that in anyway. In total, around 100,000 homes would be damaged or destroyed combined. And interestingly, most fatalities would occur in Mexico, not Jamaica, as you might expect, despite the powerful landfalls on the Yucatan Peninsula. This is also where most of the damage happened, with 2 billion estimated to have happened in Mexico. The rains from this system measured anywhere from, of course, just a mere nothing to 3 inches to 5 inches in the US, 3 to 8 in Mexico, anywhere from a maximum of 300 and lower, of course, in the Eastern Caribbean, that being just over a foot, and a staggering 823 millimeters of rain in Jamaica. That is, if I'm not mistaken, just around 2.5 feet, which is a lot of rain. That'd probably go up to my knees, which is scary to think that that all just fell from the sky. Interestingly, Texas seems to have a relative affinity for just tornadoes happening in the state with systems, especially weakened systems. 29 tornadoes happened in Texas from Gilbert's essentially remnants. Now, the same as what more than 120 happened in Ivan in Texas, and that was in a very weakened state. What can I say? The state likes the weakened state of. I'm sorry, this is a bad joke of hurricanes. It's just weird. So we have some even more oddities, but also some very impressive feats from Gilbert's as well. In case you don't know, Gilbert's was a Cape Verde hurricane. There is a thing in the Atlantic called the main development region. It starts, depending on who you ask, just around to the north of Puerto Rico and extends around halfway to the coast of Africa, and is generally around the more northernly latitudes. And this is where the main development is in the region. Main development region makes sense, right? Well, Cape Verde hurricanes do not form there, of course. Otherwise, then they'd just be called hurricanes and form closer to the Cape Verde Islands, usually have a more southerly route than other hurricanes, and for some strange reason, from what I've found, tend to be more intense as well. Hurricane Allen of 1980 is a great example of a very powerful, in fact, the most powerful Cape Verde hurricane. The name of Gilbert would be retired and replaced with Gordon, and to my knowledge, Gordon has not been retired. Interestingly, a fact that I learned while researching for this episode was that Gilbert was, and still is, one of the largest tropical systems in the entirety of the Atlantic, reaching a staggering 925 kilometers wide. That is an amount in miles that. Oh, darn. I tried to remember. I really did. I promise you I did, and I forgot, and I'm sorry. Because I live in the US, and yes, I am using kilometers here. You may be seeing a little bit of a double effect in the lower parts of Central America, as well as the islands down there, and that's for the reason of I have overlapped in a lesser transparency the track of 1951's Charlie, roughly with Mexico itself. So I had to zoom in on Charlie's track, so there is some issues with the scaling and everything, but you get it, right? This this thing, Gilbert, had a near identical track to 1951's Hurricane Charlie for most of its life. Charlie, by the way, was not necessarily a Cape Verde hurricane, nor is it an MDR hurricane by any stretch, so kind of an oddball there too. Both of these storms landfell on Jamaica. In fact, Charlie was the last one besides Gilbert to do so. That is a stretch of 37 years. So, the first Jamaican landfall in 37 years. This also, Gilbert still, is the most costly hurricane to have ever struck Jamaica, with the second place going to, lo and behold, Hurricane Charlie. What Hurricane Charlie does not have a second in is the lowest pressure in the Atlantic. Hurricane Charlie is nowhere near this, so discard Charlie from your memory right now. You don't know what Hurricane Charlie is. Bang! Memory flash stick from Men in Black. I almost said Back in Black. This is not the AC/DC song. So, as I said before, Gilbert reached a pressure of 888 millibars, which is the second lowest pressure in the entirety of the Atlantic. At the time, the Gilbert was the largest, if I'm not mistaken, and had the lowest pressure in the entirety of Atlantic hurricane history, just straight up. This would be beaten in 2005 by Hurricane Wilma, which reached 882. So not all that lower, but still lower, of course. Interestingly, it is tied with 1969's Hurricane Camille for landfall intensity at pretty much the highest landfall intensity of any Atlantic system. However, do take this with a grain of salt, as Camille's strength is sometimes debated. It does depend on the source, because there is some claims that Camille's strength was overestimated, but I digress. This is also just straight up, this is without a doubt, Gilbert had the most intense landfall on Mexico in Mexico's history. And with that, folks, that is all that I have for Hurricane Gilbert. I hope that you all learned some things from this video, because I absolutely did while researching. I hope that I have also showed you how Gilbert is a storm worth remembering. I hope to see you all in the next one, and I thank you all so much for watching.